spent 4 days down at the Brumbies last year, and talking to Dan and a few of the others around the scrummaging techniques transferable into the gym, things that he liked to do that he didn't like to do as a player. Talking to Jack Debb and players like that, Darcy Swain and guys like that are that extra bit taller, that you can actually therefore go through and say, hey, Darcy, what were the key things that changed the way you squatted, the way you deadlifted, et cetera, because I want to make sure that I'm listening and talking to current athletes at that level. And generally, they will have found ways around things that I would never even thought of.
G'day, Clint. How are you?
G'day, mate. How's things?
Yeah, going really well. And what about yourself?
Mate, yeah, really good. Nice quiet day off. Just tidying up some loose ends after Saturday rugby. So just going through our injury management and preview for next week, and also just having a bit of family time, which has been nice.
Even on a day off, it's not really a day off, is it? You still got those little things to work on and things to do before the week starts.
Mate, my partner would agree with you, no end on that one. I say I'm having a day off, and then 5 minutes later, she turns around and I'm on the phone to the coach.
It's just sort of like second nature as well to be doing those little things. It feels like you're having a day off, but it doesn't. So yeah, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, absolutely, mate, absolutely. So yeah, it certainly it falls into the category of extracurricular activity, but it's also always in the back of your mind. I've got to check in with this person about this injury, and this person about how did they pull up after their first game back, and those kind of things. So yeah, there's a lot to be done on a Sunday post game.
100%. So how's the year treating you so far, and how's the rugby season going?
Mate, look, probably we'll get the terrible parts out of the way. It's at this stage we're sort of almost halfway through the season, and so far this is the least wins I've ever had in a rugby season ever. As far as actual individual stuff, there's some good things coming through there. I had my lowest injury rate season last year in 25 years. And I'm on track at the moment to sort of to be on par with that, if not a little better. And as I joke, I'm judged on how many players we have available, how many people we can put on the park, and how close are we to full strength. And at this stage, those things are quite good. Except we've lost a couple of first graders, one for the season through an ACL at training, and one through a work accident. But other than that, we're sitting pretty well. It's been a really enjoyable season thus far as some really new innovations within our club, and also just really consistent training ethic, which obviously is something that I'm really proud of and very excited to see where that leads, especially our Colts program in the coming year.
What have been some things that have allowed you to see a reduction in injuries over the last 2 years?
Look, I think there's a couple of really good things. We introduced a couple of fail safes as far as follow-ups. And when I say that, just a really structured injury management protocol post-match. And that also therefore means, as I said in the beginning of this podcast, means a fair bit of work for me on a Sunday, just chasing up, did this player's little niggle happen here, et cetera, et cetera. Also, our medical team are really experienced. Our doctor, I've now worked with for 6 seasons, and our physio staff I've worked with over almost 19 years, in a couple of different bouts. So we have a really clear communication style. We also, in early last season, I put in a medical meeting on a Monday, and what that did is that meant that the physios had to give me a full management or injury management report by midday on a Monday, which therefore meant I could get the information to all of our coaching staff right through from first grade all the way down through to, third grade Colts and the women's program as to who would be available to train on Monday, Tuesday and Thursday nights. Now, that has given us greater clarity, and it's also allowed us to make sure that we're able to have full vision of where every person was. So let's say, for example, someone's coming back from a grade 2 hamstring. They may have played in second and first grade previously. We might need to bring them back as a 30-minute through third or fourth grade. The coaches have full clarity around where that person is up to in that process. We stage it through on a very simple Excel spreadsheet so that nobody misses that piece of the puzzle.
And it seems like it's so simple, but it gets forgotten about so much. Just being able to communicate that or have an Excel spreadsheet, a Google Doc open that everyone can see, especially the coaches, because the worst thing that they want to hear is, you get to Tuesday night, you're just about to start, and I know such and such is out for the week, or this person's doing some rehab stuff, and then that just doesn't put them in a good mood, and you always want them to be in a good mood for training. So, but just knowing what's going on and having that clear deadline. Okay, at 12 midday, we need to know everything, and we need to put in the interventions and know who's available for selection this week. So I think just something like that does get missed a lot, and if you do have that, it's such a positive headache to have.
Yeah, and even just some simple protocols around. So, for example, if we're giving a player until Thursday evening to be ready to be named for a Saturday match, we can let people know what the alternative is going to be. If this person is not cleared, this person will come up from third grade to second grade. This person will come from second grade to first grade. Therefore, solution. Everyone knows what that solution is. Now, it's not crystal clear. But it's certainly a much better procedure than we've had done in the past, which therefore allows a little bit more clarity for the coaches and also for myself. It's a much simpler system. I've got over 150 athletes that I keep an eye on. You're one of your previous guests, Matty Buchanan, who is our Colts S&C. Does a fantastic job with the management of Colts, but I'm also above that again. So I deliver the information to Matty. He therefore delivers the sessions around that. And it's making sure that every piece of the puzzle knows where we're up to with that, especially with, current concussion protocols. Matty's an excellent example of the fact that being a Colts program, if you're under 18, there is a slightly different concussion protocol to above 18. So therefore, we have some different pieces that Matty has to be right across. And our physio staff and our medical staff are amazing in that area. So that's great.
No, it's great to see, and just positive results on your end as an S&C coach, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to provide the best team available each week, and if the results aren't happening out in the field, well, then it's not really us to blame. As S&C coaches, we do get blamed quite a bit, especially in rugby, so it's always good to say, hey, no, this is actually going really well, it's probably something else. So keep doing that great job and having all the athletes available. So, what have you thought of the Super Rugby season so far before we delve into more S&C questions?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's very interesting. Like I've got a couple of athletes that are over with the Western Force, and then I've got a couple that I'm really close with at the Brumbies. Al Altoa and Jack Debrasini. I obviously coach from 14-year-old boys to where they are currently today. So I spend a lot of time tracking the Western Force with Carlo and a few of the other boys there that I've Carlo lived with me for 2 seasons when he was at the Waratahs, so I've got a pretty close relationship with a lot of those boys. Look, when it comes to the Waratahs, that's a very interesting piece of the puzzle. Put it this way, I would have been sacked if the current injury rate was happening at my level. So, I'm not shocked that DC's been, allowed to look elsewhere, so to speak. But mate, look, the medical staff and whatnot. I've done stuff with their under 18s and under 19s programs, and I thought that their programs were sound and very thorough. So I don't know the insider dealings of each one of those injuries, but I've never seen such a horrific run of injuries to especially front rowers. So there's something going on there, but I'm not quite sure what it is. I'm not privy to that information. But I do know that the moving parts of the Super Rugby program, having been part of Highlanders and a few of the other New Zealand programs in the past, there's some things there that you look at and go, well, we're not doing some of those things correctly here in Australia, and there's some poor clarity around what people need, how they need it, and potentially training modalities.
100%. So hopefully with having a new high performance team at the Wallabies, that really influences what these Super Rugby clubs are doing, because it does seem quite unusual and sort of just left field for the Waratahs to have so many injuries, especially to key players as in props. Like, people may not know how crucial props are, because you can't just breed them and find them out of anywhere. You really got to make sure that they got a good sound training and can handle the load, because some of these boys coming through out of the programs and who are 2021, it's very hard just to throw them into Super Rugby. You just can't do that. So you sort of seen how many debutants the Waratahs have thrown out this year, and then have to loan Pone from the Melbourne Rebels for a weekend. They've gotten in an old Brumby and Western Force for a last game, Harry Lloyd. So there's all these moving parts, and you really got to make sure that gets addressed. And I'm sure they will do that, because that was this season's just been a nightmare for them. And
yeah, I'd love to be privy to their end of season review. That would be the telltale one for me, and I hope it's done very fairly and very openly and honestly, because I think that a little bit of that is missing here in Australia around that. I can probably say some things based on the fact that I have no aspirations to go back to professional S&C, so I can probably say some things because I'm not fearful of cutting my own throat to miss a role. In the past, I was probably a bit nervous to say certain things because I was hoping to go back there one day. Now, having no interest at all in going back there, I'm probably a little bit more free to speak on some of those things. And look, I guess in wrapping that up, my biggest thing is S&C is a really difficult job. You're always the first one to get sacked when something goes wrong. The coach will usually throw you under the bus before they'll throw themselves under the bus, which is pretty normal. And I'll give DC huge props for the fact that not once has he ever thrown any of his medical staff or his physiotherapy / S&C staff under the bus in any way, shape or form. So that's a pretty massive feather in that man's cap. But in saying that, I can't see for the life of me how that is something that shouldn't be. Someone somewhere along the line should have to be accountable.
100%. And being a Brumbies supporter, I'm very keen for the finals and seeing what the Brumbies can do, and potentially the Reds as well. Like, who knows what they're gonna sort of so we'll see what happens. But yeah, very keen for the Brumbies and seeing how they can potentially go one step further. But yeah. So what's it like being a strength and conditioning coach in the Shute Shield here in Australia?
Mate, look, I think it's one of the best jobs in the world. I'm very fortunate. This is my 16th season, I believe. I think I worked out that, I've been on the sideline for just over 300 first grade games. And I think I've done something like, I think we worked out last year, and I can't remember why we bothered to work this out. It was a bit of a running joke, but it's something like I've done 12,500 warm-ups. So between, every training session and fourth grade right through to first grade, I try to be involved and make sure that the guys get a solid touch point. But I absolutely love my job. It's one of the things that keeps me happy, keeps me sane. I get the opportunity at this level to see my players graduate to two Super Rugby, Voate this season with the Waratahs. I've got Albert Alcock or Bertie Alcock currently over with the Force. His injury cover for hooker over there. I've got a couple of guys that are knocking on doors here at New South Wales and Aussie Sevens. And then when you go through and get guys into New South Wales 16s, 18s, 19s, and 20s programs, that's a pretty awesome thing, and it's very common these days, for me to know plenty of players on the opposition and have coached them depending on at what level, and look, it's one of the things that makes me tick. I love seeing players go further, but the other part of this is just being able to help someone progress, whether it's a fourth grader into third grade, whether it's someone that had little to no confidence and then does have confidence. It's not just about the rugby. It's not just about the strength conditioning. It's not just about any of it. It's about the little pieces and the little connections and the friends you make along the way.
And you probably don't realize that as an S&C coach, going through your career early on, how much of an impact you do have at a club, and all those things that you just said, from fourth grade to first grade to Colts, seeing players graduate on, or seeing players just continue to play third grade at a consistent level and play for a very long time. It's great to see.
Yeah, look, I was standing there yesterday, and one of the first graders from Sydney Uni came up and gave me a big hug and a g'day, and after the game yesterday, I went and had a schnitzel and a beer with the second grade head coach, the second grade manager, and the director of rugby from Sydney Uni. So for me, when you sort of sit back and realise the crossover between clubs, the crossover of relationships, and just the amazing parts of what this sport gives you. I briefly mentioned Alan Alatoa. His dad was at the game yesterday, whom I've had a long-standing relationship with. I played against Billy, his dad, when I was 19 years old. Billy at that stage weighed probably 150 kilos, and I was a mere baby, and now I've had the opportunity to coach both of his sons, through into captains of their country. So there's some pretty amazing pieces of the puzzle when you sort of sit back and look at it, mate.
It's great, and you could probably tell stories about trying to tackle a 150 kilo individual who, that's just crazy. I think that the heaviest person I probably tackled was maybe 130, so I couldn't imagine someone who's a bit bigger.
Yeah, well, mate, even I joke quite a lot when I do my weigh-ins pre-game. My current my current pack outweighs every Super Rugby pack and the Wallabies at the moment. So we certainly shouldn't be losing scrums. But that's been a telltale sign of West Harbour Rugby Union for many, many years.
Breeding big down there, eh? Jeez. So what makes a good S&C program in the semi-professional rugby setting?
I would say two very, very key things. Number one is communication, and number two is adaptability. Look, everyone can write in, your back squat, your push presses, your power cleans. Everyone can write that stuff in, but you've got to adapt to each player. I have every spectrum of player that comes to me. Our current team, we have one of our players is a winger who is a lawyer. Another one of our players is a front rower who digs holes for a living. Now, the hard part about that is, yes, you've got to have some consistency across your programming, but you've also got to understand what that particular person's body biomechanically has had to go through on any given day. So you've got to be adaptable. You've got to be smart. You've got to listen to your athletes. You've got to talk. You've got to know a little bit more about them. You've got to have good, solid touch points around that, because what's key is understanding when they can do certain things. Okay. As I said very early in this podcast, one of the key factors is I need to put people on the park all the time. They have to play every Saturday for 18 weeks of the year. So I have to make sure that not only are they fit and resilient, but they're also available. And if I'm bashing someone with a 5x5 back squat on a Thursday, well, good luck to them having to then get out there and scrummage on a Saturday. Like it's very easy to write exercises into a program. It's very difficult to write a program that is adaptable to each individual and make sure that we have the opportunity to get good, solid clarity and balance there.
I love having options for my athletes, and that's probably something that I had to learn over my sort of early career was just allowing athletes have options of how they sort of warm up, or the option of what main lift you want to lift today. If it's a squat pattern, what works best for you? Because just like you said, you might have someone who's a lawyer and been sitting down all day, or you might have had someone who's digging holes and their back's pretty jacked up. So what's an option they can have and take some ownership of their training program? Well, you've designed it and it's all looking really, really good, but just allowing our athletes to have options to pick what they want to do is going to get the best out of them. And I think that's something that I've had to learn. And now I just love giving my athletes options.
Yeah, I think in early days of my career, you would write a program, and this is what it is. This is exactly how it works. This is how it has to be done. This is it. And probably starting out some early parts of my career in rugby league, S&C, there was a lot less emphasis on player welfare and player well-being. So it was pretty much, who cares if they break, you get a new one. And I hated that mentality. Coming through the West Tigers program of 2003, 2004, right through 2008. I saw a lot of that. We got the opportunity to win a grand final in 2005, and there was obviously some pretty amazing athletes in that. But that 2005 season, we had the worst injury rate of any club up to round 7. Now, we then went through and had no injuries for the entire rest of the season, bar a couple of little niggles that maybe kept a player or two out for a week. And look, they're the little things that you see, through a change in program, a change in style, and also just some listening to your athletes that are really critical pieces.
And those could be the missing pieces to your program as well that you're not really paying attention to. So yeah, just listen to your athletes, communicate with them, and then having the ability to adapt your program. It's the art of coaching. If you don't do that, then you're not really coaching. You're sort of being a dictator, I guess. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And look, mate, anyone can write a 4-day-a-week weights program that's got a two leg dominant days and 2 upper body dominant days, and call it an amazing program. But if you don't have the buy-in from your athletes, the buy-in from the medical staff, and certainly the buy-in from your coaches, you're definitely pushing shit uphill.
Mm. We've pretty much touched upon it about for this question, but how has your coaching and programming evolved over the years? Is there anything else that sort of comes to mind?
Yeah, look, I think I think one of the things that I've really made sure of is that every year I've done some pretty substantial professional development. I've spent a lot of money on my education as far as university, but it's not even those things. I spent 4 days down at the Brumbies last year, and talking to Dan and a few of the others around the scrummaging techniques transferable into the gym. Things that he liked to do that he didn't like to do as a player. Talking to Jack Debb and players like that, Darcy Swain and guys like that are that extra bit taller, that you can actually therefore go through and say, hey, Darcy, what were the key things that changed the way you squatted, the way you deadlifted, etc., etc. Because I want to make sure that I'm listening and talking to current athletes at that level, and generally they will have found ways around things that I would never even thought of. So I think it's really important to just stay open and keep learning. The number of young S&Cs, young personal trainers, etc., that I see that are not open to learning. They go, oh no, I'm cool, I'll write my own program. those kind of things. Look, I just think that's the worst thing you can possibly do. I've still never actually written my own program. Sure, I've written my own sessions here and there where I've needed to just go and lift. But if I'm on program, I make sure that someone else writes it still to this day, because they'll also see the things that I don't want to put in a program and they'll put them in.
Yeah, 100%. And then it also helps, I guess free your mind up as well, so you're not biased towards certain things because it's a big library up here in your brain of exercises and what to do and what not to do. And if you've been training in certain regime or exercise and all that, you then put that onto your athletes, and then just like you said, you're forgetting some things. You're probably biased towards something when you should have been doing this, and you look back and you're like, ah, shit, I probably should have been doing something else. So
Yeah.
I really like that.
Look, it's funny. I had a long argument. Let's call it a difference of opinion with a personal trainer just recently about Zercher squats. Now, Zercher squats are as old as the hills. Are they the be all and end all of squatting? Absolutely not. Is anything the be all and end all of squatting? Absolutely not. Every squat has a reason, a modality, a time of the season, a time of preparation, whatever it happens to be utilised. But I think sometimes what people end up doing is using things that they haven't seen for a while and trying to make it their own. Poliquin's brilliant at this. He made a Peterson step up. He dropped Peterson's surname off it and put his own in front of it, and formalised an exercise that had been done for 50 years at that stage and called it his, and the world then started calling it a Poliquin step up. So marketing reigns supreme within the world of personal training and strength and conditioning in a lot of ways. And I think things like Zercher squat can fall into that category. Very simple, but that doesn't make it a bad exercise. It just means that it's formalized and come back around in fashion. So if you spend too much time on Instagram, your program will start to resemble the exercises that you see done there, because monkey see, monkey do. If I've watched 50 different squat videos and then I go to write a program, the first thing I think about is a squat. So therefore, it really is. You've got to make sure that you are putting the exercise that is right for that athlete or that client into the program, and not having that subconscious bias towards whichever exercise you've just spent the last 50 minutes watching on YouTube or Instagram.
100%. I think for me, something again that you think is so simple, but it does get lost, is just watching your athletes do what they do. Like in the current population that I work in, going down to see different sections and different units and seeing what they do, I'm like, okay, that makes it so much easier for me to understand what I need to write in that program, instead of me just sitting there looking at, say, team building and be like, okay, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. Whereas if I've actually gone down there and seen what they're doing and how they do it, easy. It makes it so much easier to perform, to write up that program for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we get caught up in the excitement of, ooh, what about this funky new variety of X? I saw this, maybe I'll try that. Well, look, I've had a very firm belief, and I'll still stand by it. Everything new that you learn or see or want to experience, put it in your own program for 6 weeks before you ever put it into some other clients or some other athlete's program, because genuinely you need to understand it. You need to understand what it does, how it feels, the little minutiae, the little details around, if I move my foot this way, how does that feel? If I do this, how does that feel? And I think sometimes, somebody will go to a course and the very next day I'll see them adding a particular exercise straight into their athlete or client's program, and I'll just be like, come on guys, you don't even know what that exercise does yet. So
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. So when athletes are deciding to play for a senior club, they could just be coming out of school, or they're having, change cities or go interstate or overseas. What should they look for in picking the right club for them?
look, I think that's a great question. It's really interesting. Firstly, before I answer that, I think one of the key attributes is finding the right people to communicate with. And the example that I give is our Colts head coach, Steve Shapland. Great man. He's opened up some pathways with the Illawarra Rugby Union and also Central North Rugby Union. Now, we had 7 kids and their parents come down from Central North. They, stayed. They watched some training. They watched some games. They then went into our members only area and watched first grade play. They had some time in the change rooms. They did a few really interesting things, and I saw the faces of those kids and their parents just blown away by certain aspects of what we do that I find very normal. Every day-to-day happening, and you realise that when I was a 16-year-old kid playing rugby in Tamworth, which is part of Central North, strangely enough, here in New South Wales, I had no understanding of what Shute Shield Rugby Union would be like. I had no understanding of what it was like to be in a change room with, a whole bunch of guys that were, 6'8" and beyond, So there was a moment there where I just had a moment of appreciation for what Steve had organised when it came to that. So using that piece of information to answer the question that I'm about to answer, my belief is that you must feel comfortable in an environment. Yeah, sure, you want to be challenged, and challenge pushes you to higher levels, but you need to be in an environment where you can say what you need to say, ask what you need to ask, and know where you need to go to ask those questions. So ultimately, I guess the answer to the question is, if it doesn't feel comfortable the second you walk in, I think it's time to leave. Now, as far as actually how to find that comfort, what's comfortable for you, Kieran, and what's comfortable for me are going to be 2 very different things. So I think, truthfully, we need to be in a situation where we know what our values are and we know what we're looking for before we go after those things.
100%. I love that answer. And yeah, it is such a big decision to make if you're coming fresh out of school or if you have traveled to a new place, trying to find the right club for you. But yeah, you sort of get that gut feeling. And if you got that gut feeling and have observed everything and seen all the resources and coaching available and the communication, then either make your decision is yes or no. There's nothing wrong with saying no and trying another club, because that club might be the one. So yeah, 100%. So, how do athletes set? How do coaches set up their athletes for success in season during rugby?
Look, I think I'll go back to a phone call that I, strangely enough, just got off. I just got off a phone call prior to our podcast with Cameron Trelaw, who's our head coach, and we just went through some of the things that went wrong yesterday, but also we went through the last couple of weeks of training and just went into planning for the next couple of weeks as well. Now, that's a really regular meeting that Cam and I have post-match to make sure that what adjustments have we got to make and so on and so forth. So the reason that I'm using that as my litmus test is that creates an environment where I can say what I need to be able to say, Cam can say what he needs to be able to say, and we can both look at the best outcomes for our athletes. So I believe that we need an environment that is open, not just reactive, open to listening to our athletes, open to encouraging our athletes, but also using our knowledge and experience to guide those training sessions and pathways. So the answer to that is most definitely a challenging, open environment. That means that you can say what you need to say without fear of prejudice, say what you need to say without fear of judgment, but also creating an environment that enables athletes and also coaching staff to challenge the head coach, myself, whoever it is, on our whys.
And I like how the head coach has involved you in that conversation, because at sort of the amateur level and then coming up to the semi-professional level, it's very easy just for the head coach to make the decisions and not really get the decision off an S&C coach who really at majority of the time is very unbiased, because sometimes we've played the sport, sometimes we haven't. We're just looking at athletic performance. So if you haven't involved an S&C coach, you're sort of missing out on a couple of key points that they can provide and really help push the team forward and into the direction that you need.
Look, and I guess being a veteran in this industry these days, I've probably given myself as much opportunity to have those conversations that I wouldn't have given myself in early days. I probably would have been fearful of my job. I would have been wanting to protect my integrity. Whereas now I'm like, I'm more than happy to be told no. I'm more than happy to put an idea out there for the coaches. I'm more than happy to say what I believe, but I'm also going to back the coaches 100%. We'll have a discussion. Sometimes they get a little heated. Sometimes they don't. Today's was a very slapstick, very fun conversation, even though, we picked on the players a little bit. And we picked on ourselves about some of the decisions we made last week. But ultimately, we've come to an outcome for the next 3 weeks, which is pretty important for where our season currently sits. Our lower grades all won yesterday. Fourth grade had a draw, third grade won, second grade won, and then a first grade, unfortunately, it was a dismal defeat. But we looked at all of the reasons behind that, and we've sort of flagged the things that we can improve, and now it's up to the players to flag the things that they can improve, and we live to fight another day.
And it sounds like you're not being stagnant during the in-season. It's like, cool, it's just another part of the season and we need to progress forward and need to keep getting better. Whereas some programs could be the opposite, where they are winning and like, hey, let's not touch anything. We're keeping everything the same. We're not going to change anything, and sort of get superstitious.
Yeah, look, this is my 27th season, and I played in the Shute Shield back in my first season was 1997, and that's a very different. That was a very different world then to what it is today. And if I can pass one piece of advice on to all S&Cs, regardless of what level they're at. Don't ever shoot yourself in the foot by thinking you're right. Always ask for other people's opinions. Even if you decide to still run with exactly what you were going to do in the process or the first place, you just need to make sure that there's some good, solid opinions around you to just challenge what you're thinking, to just challenge the potential outcomes, because sometimes you can't see those things because you're inside it.
And especially if you're reacting with emotion instead of, logic, and actually taking a second to step back and really use your brain and experience. So I'm guilty of that. Even over this weekend, where I really wanted to act with emotion last week, where I just wrote everything down. I took a step back, and I'll address it next week. But I was, a bit upset with the situation, what happened. I'm just like, come on, calm down, let your ego go to the side, write it down, take the weekend, and see how you can attack it next week.
Yeah, good book there. Ego is the enemy. So it's a very, very good book, and it will certainly change the way you, react to a situation. And wonderful piece of advice that I was given very early in my career, and it's been popularized in many books, but the only thing we can control is our reaction to a situation.
100%. Hi, everyone. We just want to take a quick break from this episode. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far and all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby SandC on all social media platforms to all your family and friends. Thanks again for all your support, and now back to the episode. Is there anything that comes to mind that coaches should avoid during the in-season?
Losing. Look, I think the thing that I see quite regularly is coaches drop off on things like speed training. They drop off on fun. They drop off on and especially here in Sydney, and I know you have this same issue in Adelaide, but as we start to get colder in the nights, there has to be an element of fun to start that, because and I have this saying, and I say it quite regularly when something goes wrong, but that's footy's fun. It's supposed to be fun. We started playing this game because it was fun. We started coaching this because it is fun. And I just think that people lose sight of that a little bit at certain points in time. They get caught up in wins and losses. They get caught up in, why didn't this player make this tackle? Why didn't this player do this when they said they were going to? And look, at the end of the day, I can't change whether someone makes a tackle on the field. I can't change whether someone, knocks on. I can't change those things. But what I can influence is certainly the amount of fun that a player and a team has on any given week.
I couldn't agree more with the speed and the fun aspect. Speed, especially when you may get, for my experience, injuries happen in around two to threes. There's like a two or threes. There's like if there's one hamstring, there's normally another one popping up very soon. So you see that happen, and you're like, oh shit, maybe I'm doing too much high speed meters, or I'm doing too many sprints in this certain distance, and you're like, maybe we just all drop off. When actually you're doing the correct thing. It's just going back to a point you made before, is understanding what did that person do on the weekend? Did they go out and party that night, or did they do some extra stuff in the gym that they didn't tell me about, or something's going on at work and more stress? So if you really understand that, then you get down to and like, okay, that's the reason why you've injured yourself. The rest of the group's actually really fine, and we're going to continue to progress. It's just these other little things. So couldn't agree more with the speed aspect. We do sort of get frightened a bit, I guess, in season, not want to break everyone, and the fun element for sure. It gets cold. Being from Canberra, it gets really cold out there. So if you're the one out there going, "Oh shit, it's cold," and you're freezing, your athlete's going to see that and be like, "Okay, this isn't really going to be a good start to the session, is it?"
Look, the guys will attest to this, and I quite regularly talk about this. I jump in puddles on rain days, and I try and splash people, and I carry on. Now, look, I mean, there's no one that knows me that doesn't think I'm a big kid anyway. I'm 46 in January, and I certainly behave like I am 6 most of the time. I still pull pranks on people. I still, I still try and crack jokes as often as possible. And, I do believe footy's fun. But the reason that I'm bringing that up is I think sometimes what an athlete sees us doing, like I won't even put my foot over my head when it's raining, because I know that the players can't do that while they're training. So why would I? I think that we need to emulate the same things that they have to do. Yeah, sure, I might have a pair of tracksuit pants on and a hoodie and whatnot, but if we're in the middle of a rain session, we just had a horrible bout of rain here in Sydney. Actually, here's an interesting stat for you, Kieran, just totally off topic, but this is a fun one. So my stats show that in the last 15 seasons of me being in S&C in Shute Shield, that we averaged 9 rain-out days a year. Last year we had 3, and this year so far we've had 26. So there's certainly some interesting things that happen there. And I was talking to Nathan Charles. Cheese is an ex-Wallaby hooker, tremendous human being, good man. Cheese is the GM of Sydney Uni. We were chatting about that, about rain days and whatnot, and the things that you have to do here in Sydney, because I guess land is a premium, and our fields get closed. We were joking that if someone spits on the field, the council close it. So we were talking about that, and he was saying they even this year had to go to training at 7 a.m. in the morning because the field that they could get was at one of the public high schools. So, yeah, that just kind of goes to show how many rain-out sessions we've had so far here in Sydney.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's very similar in Canberra as well, where back in the day they didn't really govern it too much. So like, oh, if it's raining, you're fine. But in sort of the last two seasons I was in with West Rugby, it was like as soon as there was rain, grounds were closed, and we had to find another way to get that stimulus in. So yeah, 26 days is crazy, and I knew the rain was going off over the other side of the country, whereas here I think I've had two rainy days in South Australia this year, so it's crazy. Yeah. So, what does a typical gym session look like in season for your boys?
Look, I'll kind of wrap around a week so that it makes it a little bit clearer to people. So Monday will be, a little bit of a gym flush. The boys will come in, roll the legs over on bikes, get some, some foam rolling and mobility done. Dependent on where they sit with corks, bumps, bruises, cuts, abrasions, and injuries, we will be in a position where the players will try and get something heavy done around a back squat or a trap bar deadlift or something along those lines. Then that'll be on a Monday when we do review. That'll be a fairly light session, but it'll be one heavy lift if possible. Now, if they don't have the ability to do that because they're still too sore from the weekend, we'll just add some additional recovery modalities in there and remove that heavy lift. Now, again, this is the adaptability of what occurs now. 15 years ago, I would have said, no chance. You're definitely heavy squatting today. You're definitely heavy bench pressing, et cetera, because I didn't want my athletes to atrophy. I wanted to make sure, we kept that hypertrophy there. We kept that muscle mass. But the reality of it is I've probably realized that we didn't need to do quite as much as we did. And then the Tuesday session will be the bulk of our session in gym and on field. Tuesday will generally be a lot of prehab work in the beginning, some shoulder, some knee, some ankle, some hamstring work, whether we're looking at Nordics, tantrums, whatever the case may be there. We'll also try and get some jump stuff in as well. So whether that's depending on what stage of the season, single leg jumping, double leg jumping, lateral jumping, whatever it happens to be. And that'll be paired with either a push press or something power related there. Then we'll still make sure that we get, traditionally, I don't do lower body, upper body, lower body, upper body. I do 3 full body sessions. Now, my reasoning behind that is that based on, first and foremost, knowing that I have people ranging from lawyers right through to a guy digging holes for a living, or up in a roof as an electrician, or whatever the case may be, it makes it easier for me to change 1 or 2 lifts in a session rather than an entire session. So I've done the full body regime for the past probably 11 seasons. And unless I am working with almost close to pro, or, I know exactly what, off legs they've done, on legs they've done, I've just found it much easier to adapt those sessions when it comes to that. Thursday will definitely be some speed and power work before we hit the field, and also hit speed and power. So that's what my general week looks like. I don't call things accessories anymore. I was interesting. I read one of your slides, or sorry, your Instagram posts earlier last week, and it sort of listed what a gym session will look like, some prehab, your main lifts, etc. Now, I dropped out the word accessory out of my training session a few years back, and again, I'm not. This is not a pick on anyone who still uses the term, and I'm more than happy. And I know that some professional S&C still use it. But my reasoning behind that is, I've just said main lifts and then the rest of the session. Now the reason that I've done that is because what I was finding is if I called something an accessory, I found that a lot of my guys would treat it like an accessory. It was like a handbag. It was like a set of earrings. They kind of, oh, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Whereas if I've removed the terminology, they also go, oh, well, that's what's just in the program, so that's what I'm doing. Now, we're aware as S&Cs that the priority ranking goes from, your first exercise is probably your primary lift of the day, unless, of course, we're working on muscular endurance, and then it could be all 4 lifts that you're doing that day as a superset or something along those lines. But the reality of it is that I have realised that I got very caught up early in my career on terminology. I mirrored some of the most successful S&Cs in the world, and they talk about the fact that, copying is almost the ultimate form of flattery. And I was certainly doing that, Ted Rath at LA Rams, I just thought the sun shone out of Ted's butt, so if Ted wrote a session, I'd write something almost identical, and, I thought I was killing it. But I wasn't really thinking about why I was doing that. I was trying to emulate professional athletes down to my guys. I want to give my guys the most overall resistant style training session so that they can make sure that they're resilient, strong, fit, happy, and healthy, but make sure that they get through that session as well.
100%. And yeah, with the accessory thing, I think it's a great point, and something that I've used in the past, which I've stolen from John Mitchell, was weapons and armor, and having the weapons as the main one and the armor is your accessories. So I've used that in the past, but I guess I am biased towards saying it's accessories because the populations that I work with now know it as accessories. So it probably could be something that I change because, yeah, 100%. If they don't get towards the back end of the program, they're like, oh yeah, oh well, I'll just do it another time and
I'll
stuff like
do, I'll
that.
do that. I'll do that tomorrow or whatever,
Yeah.
And Mitch and Johnny Mitch and David Boyle were big advocates and people that I have had as mentors over many years. And the weapons and armor is a really cool little piece of the puzzle that both of them use in some description.
No, I'm definitely going to change the accessories back to armor because I've used it, but I think I've just forgotten to use it. So I'm definitely going to do that.
The other thing is too, it is just a term, right? Like, prehab, rehab, warm up, whatever you want to call it. Who gives a rat's? At the end of the day, as long as it gets done, and as long as it gets done with intent, that's the other piece of this. I quite regularly joke to my guys. We've got a fantastic gym at West Harbour. We've got a 490 square meter, open gym that no one else uses but us. We have something that no one else in the Shute Shield has. And sometimes I think they take a little bit of that for granted. So they don't do things with the intent that I believe is correct. And it's really interesting. I mentioned Bertie Alcock earlier in the program. He was a Colt 2 years ago. Came straight out of Trinity Grammar, local high school here, and then came into our program. Hated warm up, hated it. Just got straight into his session. Right. He then went to the Western Force and obviously got brutalised on the fact that he was not doing his prehab, rehab, and warm up. Came back and was ripped straight into those prehab, rehab, warm up exercises, and you see that almost infectiously go through the group. Which is just a wonderful thing to have happen. Now, I guess the other part of that is you need to understand that every session done with intent is going to be better, regardless of whether it's a field session, a catch pass session, a gym session. So,
100%. Intent is key. So thanks for showing us what the gym looks like now. What does the field session looks like in terms of your speed, acceleration, and change of direction stuff on that Tuesday and Thursday?
Okay, so we do full club warm up on a Tuesday, which means I have generally first to fourth grade and first to third grade Colts all together. So we'll line an entire side of a football field. So I'll have somewhere in the vicinity of 120 athletes, all working together. Now, the reason that we try and do that, and one week I'll do it, the next week Maddie will do it. The reason that we try and do things like that as a whole club is that we want to show the linear progression of how we do things. Now, once that's over, Maddie will take Colts off and I'll have grade. And on a Tuesday night, for example, this week, Tuesday night is going to be a 10-minute series of games. This week so it'll be 2 different games this week. We're going to be playing frisbee touch and a game of soccer. And they'll play 5 minutes and then switch over games. And it'll just be first grade versus second grade, third grade versus fourth grade. Third and fourth grade will play soccer for 5 minutes. First and second grade will play frisbee touch. Then we'll switch. Now, the idea behind that is we're just trying to get some meters through the legs, but at the same time, a good solid laugh. There's nothing funnier than watching a rugby player try to kick a soccer ball, especially the forwards. They're utterly pathetic. God love them. And then you'll get one of the Irish or English imports that is, probably should have been in an academy program for Man City or Man United. So they blitz it and, go run rings around our boys, which is just a lot of fun. And you get a good solid laugh out of that and watch people go to kick the ball and miss it completely and those kind of things. Then Thursday this week, so we've got a 3x3 minute rotation. The first 3 minute rotation, so there'll be 3 groups and I'll rotate through the 3 stations. One station will be a passing grid. One station will be an agility grid with me, and then the third station will be a speed block where they'll just do 2 70-meter walkbacks. Now, the idea behind that is, we're 1 week before the bye. We've done a lot of high-speed meters. I downloaded GPS this morning, and there were some big meters run yesterday. We had one of our boys over 10Ks, which is big distance for a rugby union player. So we just have to be mindful of that and use the data there to I guess, make sure that we're on the money around where we're at. Knock on wood, no hamstring injuries in the last 4 weeks. So therefore, for me, I'm just gonna get us through this week. Then we have a bye week, so we'll give the players 7 days off before they're back into it, and it'll be a fairly hectic week back. So yeah.
Nice. Do you like to do more acceleration stuff on the Tuesday and then that longer distance on the Thursday?
Yeah, Axel decel. No, so I'll go Axel decel on a Tuesday with more game-related fitness. And then a Thursday will be shorter, sharper speed work.
Oh, nice. And you found that's worked quite well over the last couple of years?
Yeah, because what happens on a Thursday is we end up doing a captain's run at the back end. So the session's slightly lighter. It enables me to be able to monitor the players a little more closely. What I've also found is that on a Tuesday, even if I've got players that are still sore from the weekend, I can get them to run meters. Which will actually in turn flush through some of that soreness, get rid of any of the built-up residual waste products out of their legs and those kind of things. Whereas if I try and sprint on a Tuesday, I'm always going to be missing people. I'm always going to have people having to sit that session out, just been to physio. The physio said no, they're not able to run till Thursday, etc., etc. So back in the day, I certainly used to sprint on a Tuesday, and I definitely found that my numbers available were far less than on a Thursday.
100%. So how do you allow your athletes to, reach their peak performance for the back end of the season? What does this look like for you and the athletes?
All right, so I work on a long linear periodization scale, so I do 6-week blocks. Now, there's a couple of reasons that I do that. Previously, working your tutor bomber style 4-week blocks where you have a 3-week peak, a 1 week, a deload. I run a 5-week with a 1 week deload. Now, the reason being is we have 18 rounds in our season. So maths simply works straight into that. 3 6-week blocks within season. You work backwards from the final series. That gives you a 3-week lead into the grand final. There's a whole bunch of pros and cons around that. But for me, I've kind of tried everything over 15 seasons, and I've been able to play with that. My time with the Tigers, the Highlanders, Southland Rugby in New Zealand, and a few others. I've had the opportunity to really see which methods work in which country, why they work in that country, and also related to travel, to game times, etc., etc. We're very fortunate here in the Shute Shield. First grade play at 3:05 p.m. every Saturday. Very, very rarely will we play on a Friday night or a Sunday. There are about 2 games. I think this year there are 3 games on a Friday night out of the entire 18 rounds. And when I say 3 games, I mean, 1 game out of, every 8 that occurs each week. So there's 3 games only on a Friday night this year. And I think one of them was because of Anzac Day. One of them was because of a venue change because of wet weather. So, look, very rare. We're very fortunate we have the exact same game time, which certainly helps in planning.
100%. Whereabouts do you put the deload week in that 6-week block? Do you put it at the end, the middle?
Put it at the end still. I'll do every 12 weeks, I'll do a very substantial testing block, which will serve as a deload in that second block. But the deload on the second week is definitely one of the things that is, I guess, easy for me to dictate. So we have 5 weeks of full training, and then on the 6th week we have a deload.
Nice, very nice. So now just getting into some random questions that have popped up, and just try and answer them short and sharp, and compared to what we've just done now, which has been awesome. So outside of rugby union, rugby league, what sports do you keep up to date with and watch?
Well, look, I'm a massive fan of rowing. I've been fortunate enough to guide some of the boys through to bronze and silver medals at Olympics in the quad scull. So I've been really fortunate there, and certainly enjoyed watching the short, sharp, 5-minute efforts of rowing. I absolutely love the Uncle Toby's or Nutrigrain Ironman. Kendrick Louis, who I've coached for, this will be 12 seasons, is going to go into his final season, I think. He hasn't announced the retirement yet, but I think it's impending. But I absolutely love that as a sport. I love multidiscipline sports. I love seeing athletes able to excel in more than one area.
No, that's awesome. What has been a big game-changing moment in your coaching career that stands out so far?
Well, there's probably 2 really big ones. The first premiership that we won with Eastwood back in the day, I realised very simply that the winning feeling, whilst being an amazing thing, means very little if you don't have connection to your players. So that was huge for me. I still regularly speak with many members of that team: Jai Ayub, Hugh Perrott, Hugh Roach, Steve Cummins, etc., etc. These are close friends now, and the connection that was gained from those teams was just exceptional. And the second one, and probably the biggest coaching piece, and I'm sure a lot of S&Cs will say this, but the first time I got sacked at Southland, they'd offered me another contract for the following season on the Monday, and on the Wednesday afternoon I got sacked. And it was really interesting. I was sitting there thinking to myself, my God, I should have signed that contract. I would have had them on a legal technicality. But I remembered at that very moment thinking to myself, my God, what did I do wrong? Now, fair enough. There'd been some other things that were at play in that particular season. And on the Friday, I got offered the role with the Highlanders. So I went from working at an ITM to straight up to a Super Rugby club. So, look, I think, the highs and lows of S&C are quite interesting. That's the only time I've been sacked so far in my life. Everywhere else I've moved on from, probably smartly at certain points, I must admit. But I just think that it's really interesting to see in my career that some of the biggest highs have also followed the biggest lows.
100%. Yeah, it sounds like an emotional roller coaster that week. High, lower than high, and you're just like, what's going on? That's cool. Any book recommendations that people should read out there? If it's coaching or leisure?
Absolutely. Look, I think Carol Dweck's Mindset is probably one of my favourite all-time books. A Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl is probably one of the ones that I fall back on very, very, very frequently. But look, I think also, staying up to date with something slightly outside of your wheelhouse. Like, I love neuroscience. I've read a lot of books recently around that. I love listening to Peter Attia's podcast. There's definitely areas there that really fascinate me, but also I think you've got to follow what suits you, but challenging yourself to read something that sits outside of your wheelhouse is definitely my big takeaway for anyone out there.
100%. And I do enjoy that as well, going something that's just completely different. Like right now, I've watched Reacher, a couple months ago, and then just getting into the Reacher books. So it's like just something just not coaching. I don't have to switch on. I just enjoy it as well. That even something as simple as that can help you switch off and just think about something else.
Yeah, I'll let you guys in on a little secret. I kept this secret for a very long period of time. I'm horribly not creative. Like, I don't have a creative bone in my body. And I bought a candle making kit many years ago, but I finally got around to having a crack at making them. Now, mate, I now have more candles in the house than you could possibly imagine, and it's very interesting. And my partner Jess laughs at it that that this big aggressive bearded guy who swears a huge amount loves to make candles with pretty smelling scents. So it's something that whilst it may not be a book, it appeals to the opposite side of the brain, and that's probably some of what I'm talking about with that neuroscience piece. As I said, I'm not very creative at all. I couldn't draw. I can't paint. I definitely cannot dance and definitely cannot sing. So this is my creative element. So yeah.
Nice. What is a highlight that stands out in your coaching career so far?
Yeah, the first time one of my athletes got picked up by the Wallabies was just absolutely awesome. It was just a massive moment for me. I've been very fortunate of having a whole bunch of guys picked up for Tonga, Samoa, New Zealand, France. Oh my God, I can't even name all the countries these days, which is, again, a massive part of, how fortunate I've been in my career. But that first person to get picked up by the Wallabies, which was Alan Alatoa, it was probably that moment where I realised, I started coaching him when I was 14 years old. And Alan quite regularly jokes, some of the things that I did to those guys, some of the running I forced them to do helped forge his work ethic today. Now, that's probably the ultimate compliment that I've ever been given by anyone. He also said some pretty nasty things about me that we'll leave to another podcast. But Al, Scotty CEO, guys like Jed Holloway, people like that. I've even though I've had very, very, very small touch points on those guys' careers, it's so amazing to see them excel and go down that path.
100%. Love that. What is your go-to song to sing at a karaoke bar? Even though you just said you don't like to sing, but if you had to, what would it be?
Yeah. Look, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding. My partner Jess and I, one of our first dates, she is an amazing singer and I am utterly terrible. We went to a karaoke bar and I had a crack because I was trying to impress her. We have a wonderful little family now and a little girl by the name of Ellie, which, clearly my singing is not what got me across the line in that one. But, that's definitely my go-to. It was also my grandmother's favourite song. So for me, there's an element of, something very near and dear to my heart. So that would definitely be the song. If it's my entire family, it will be The Gambler by Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, and then halfway through the song, everyone else would be singing that. So it's a good song to pick. What would be your message to people out there if you could only provide them with some words and advice? What would you say to them?
Just go for it. Look, the best thing about anything that we have the opportunity to do is we choose. You can do just about anything you put your mind to. I'm very clear on the fact that I made a lot of mistakes in the early parts of my life. I did some things wrong. I did some things I'm not proud of, but you can certainly change that story. And, as I said, amazing partner, beautiful little girl, live in a great part of the world. I get to influence the lives of athletes every day. So for me, it's go after whatever it is you want and find a way.
100%. Love that. Who should be my next guest on the podcast? Is there any athletes or coaches that come to mind that I should reach out and get on?
Yeah, look, David Boyle is a huge influence in my career and life. Strangely enough, there's a guy by the name of Clint Hoare. Now, Clint and I have run parallel paths in our S&C world. He just recently most recently was the Wallaroos S&C. He finished up with them last year, but he's got an amazing story. And again, another incredibly hard worker, very different to me, but we get along like a house on fire. Dave Boyle, as I said, has just been such an integral part of my career. But I guess the other one, from a coaching perspective, is Stu Woodhouse. So Stu Woodhouse is the head of King's School currently. He's also the head of Philippines, which I'm also fortunate enough to be the S&C for the Philippines rugby team, which unfortunately we haven't had a chance to tour for quite a number of years based on COVID. But he's tremendous. And then the final person that I'd say is Jared Hodges, who's the Indigenous liaison officer. Indigenous liaison manager for the Sydney Swans.
Nice. Thanks for the recommendations. I'll definitely try and hit them up and see who I can get on the podcast. So where can listeners find you on social media if they want to keep up to date with your story and what's going on?
Yeah, Clint_Hill Strength on Instagram. It's probably where I'm most active. Facebook is just my name, Clint Hill. And they're probably the two platforms that I use the most. I've been on a few other podcasts over the years as well, lots to do with body science because as I've been involved with them as a company for over 20 years. So I've done quite a number of podcasts and a number of challenges and things for them. And if you wish to, you can always just reach out with an email. I do my best to answer as many questions as I possibly can and help in any way because I think one of the things that I was fortunate enough in life, you mentioned Johnny Mitchell, obviously Dave Boyle I've mentioned, but both men gave me huge hours of their time very early in my career, and I'm very fortunate for what those guys did. So I try and emulate and reciprocate those things in my career.
Awesome. Well, Clint, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been awesome to get an insight into your many, many years of experience, and I've gotten some really good gold nuggets from this. I know other coaches and athletes as well, but thank you so much for joining me today on a Sunday on your day off, which is meant to be a day off, but it's not really. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to releasing this podcast out to everyone.
Thanks very much, mate. And yeah, look, I guess the other thing that I'll just add to all of your listeners, watchers, and followers, please make sure that you share any podcast, not just this one, that you appreciate and like. Reshare it on your own social media, because the information that gets delivered in these kind of podcasts is second to none. And I know that guys like Kieran and whatnot deserve your help in growing their audience, because every time we grow that audience, we can help strengthen a pathway and introduce someone to someone new, and hopefully help people get the next job or whatever the case may be.
100%. Thank you.
My pleasure, mate. Take care. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby SandC podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby SandC on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby SandC today and take your game to the next level.